What's up, guys? Welcome to Bros in the Arena. Today I got my NEET hat on because I'm NEET maxing. As you guys should know, I uploaded a short the other day where I disclosed that I quit my recent job that I just got into. I was only there for like a week, and it was that bad. It just didn't work out. So I'm gonna dive into it more in this video of why it didn't work out. So I've only been in trucking for about 4 years. Out of school, I found a company that I stayed with for 4 years, and they were getting sued by a union, and that was causing them to lose their clients, and work was slowing down. For like a year and a half, work was slow, but towards the end, it was unbearable. Like everyone was working 1 or 2 days a week. So I had to leave. That was the first time I recently quit my job. I left that first job I was at for 4 years. It took me about like 3 weeks to fully be into a new job, a new position that was closer, same type of work at the ports, and the pay seemed like pretty much the same. So I was doing that and it was cool, but they kept assigning me work too much, man. Like they were assigning me work up into the 14th hour, assigning me work. So that means like if I had because as truckers you have an 11-hour driving limit or a 14-hour work day. So your work day, whether you're driving or waiting you have delays sometimes, you're just waiting. Your whole day could only be up to 14 hours. That's the max legal limit. Or if you have a long trip, then you only could drive 11 hours. Because sometimes you're not waiting on nothing. You're just constantly driving. If they send you really far, sometimes you're driving the whole, 11 hours. So that's the legal limit for driving, and that's the legal limit for work days. And these guys, they would be assigning me work up until the 14th hour, completely disregarding the 11-hour driving limit. So one time, the first time I had an issue with dispatch, it was like on Tuesday. On Tuesday, this last Tuesday, today's Saturday. This last Tuesday, I was at my ninth hour and I was in Carson. And I had to, my base is in Ontario. So I had to drive. I still had a 2-hour drive ahead of me on my ninth hour. And they had given me a work that had me dropping off an empty at the port, picking up a load, and then taking that load to Paris, docking the load, and then getting an empty, and then coming to Ontario. That whole thing at that time, because it was like 2:30 p.m., that whole thing without a hitch would have took me 4 hours without a hitch. And with hitch, depending on the delays, it could have taken me 5 hours. So they were assigning me a 4 or 5 hour job at my ninth hour. And this is where I had to call dispatch and I asked them what are you guys doing? Can you reschedule this for another driver? I still have a 2-hour drive to come back up to base. I don't think I could do it. And they were giving me the book. So then they said if I don't like it, then I have to talk to the boss. So I called the boss and we got into it a bit. And we both chalked it up as like just business. You know, in business, it could get a little messy when you're trying to understand the people that you're working with. So I told him, like, you know what? Now I know where you stand. Now I know that you guys actually are going to run your drivers up to 14 hours. Because there's companies, like the last company, they understand that you're a person and they value the work that you do and they value the person putting in a lot of hours. And so they try to work with you. You know, sometimes if you're on your 10th or 11th hour, they're not going to give you more work because, I mean, that's already a long day, 10, 12 hours. Like, it's not crazy. It's just that this was one of the companies that doesn't give a shit. They're going to run you 14 hours, whether you like it or not. And I did not understand that until you push the limits and you find where the line is. So the boss told me, like, hey, you know what, Ricardo? If you try to reject the job again, then you're fired. And I was like, fine, that's fair enough. So I was not pleased with the situation, but I was willing to just bite the bullet and get the work done. So, I went into Wednesday with that mindset, did my job, went into Thursday with the mindset. However, there was a situation that occurred. I was in Chino with, I didn't know how many drive hours I had left. I was guessing I roughly had 2 to 3 hours of drive time left, maybe 4, but I had been driving like most of the day. So 4 was the max amount of driving hours I had left that I was guessing, right? Because the way this company does their system, I don't actually have access to a clock that tells me how many driving hours I have by you know tracking my GPS and knowing when I'm stopped and when I'm not stopped, when I'm driving and all that. This company doesn't do that. It has its own system where that's handled on the back end, but as a driver, you don't have access to those hours. So I was in Chino with potentially 4 hours maximum of drive time left. And I called dispatch. I had just got a live unload. And I asked them, like, hey, where you want this empty to go? And they said, oh, just bring it back down to Carson. And I was like, I was like, Carson? And they're like, yeah, Carson. I'm like, all right. So I hung up. And as I was driving on the street, I was thinking, like, I don't actually know how many hours I have because the traffic to go from Chino at the time, it was like close to 3. It was like 2:30 again, 2:40. It was close to 3 p.m. And if you guys know, the traffic at that hour is max. You're going to get maximum traffic at that hour. So I pulled over and I called dispatch again. And I don't want to get into like that she was a female and this was the first person that I had already argued with a few days ago. And this time she answered. The first time it was a dude. He's pretty chill. He still told me to take it to Carson, but this time she answered. And as soon as she answered, I knew like this, it was not gonna end well. But I was trying my best to be like just normal. So I told her like, hey, I got this empty. I'm in Chino. Um, the other dispatchers asked me to bring it to Carson. However, I don't know if I have enough drive times. Can you tell me how many hours I have left of driving? And she was being evasive. She was giving me attitude for asking. Telling me that she has so many other drivers to worry about, that I'm not special. So am I going to do the run or not? And I told her, listen, I could wait here. Just take the extra time to figure out how many hours I have left of driving, because it's important. It's very important, because if you run out of hours while you're on the road, yeah, maybe they could tinker with the hours on the back end, which is illegal. But worst, I could get pulled over for whatever reason, and if I'm over my driving limit still driving, that's gonna get I could get in trouble and lose my license. So I waited, and she came back and she said, you have 3 hours of drive time left. And I told her that there's no way I'm gonna make it in 3 hours. So if I could just take the empty back to Ontario, which was like 10 minutes down the street from where I was at, 10, 15 minutes. She said no, and that if I have a problem, to call the boss again, right? So there I go, calling the boss, because I definitely was not going to make the trip in 3 hours. I had to make a round trip in 3 hours from Chino to Carson at 3 p.m. That's impossible. You know what was going to happen? On my way back from Carson to Ontario, I was going to run out of hours. I was going to have to pull over and wait for a fucking other driver to rescue me. And I would have been well past 14 hours, but technically off duty, but still at work. So I call the boss, and then the first thing he tells me is, Ricardo, are we going to have this issue every day? And I tell him, I hope not, because in my mind, there's no issue. Like, what's the issue? I literally can't make it based on legal drive hour limits. So send me back to base, where it's like 10, 15 minutes down the street. And I would have ended my day at like the 10th hour. It's not like I didn't fucking work. That would have ended my day on the 10th hour. Or they could have gave me something else that was doable, like a drop and hook, or like a short live unload that was well within the 3 hour limit that I had. Like, they had some things to do. There was like, I was not rejecting work. I couldn't do it. I had no more hours. So this fucking guy starts telling me all this shit about how like I can't be rejecting work. So I tell him, listen, man, I just spoke with your dispatch. They literally told me I have 3 hours left of driving hours. I cannot make this run in that time. So find something else for me. And he said, listen, I'm not going to play he say, she say. I don't know how many driving hours you have. You could calculate it on your head. And I was like, hey, man, just look in the computer and tell me how many hours I have so we could confirm this. And he was very elusive, because he doesn't have that access. And basically, I told him that he's a fucking retard, and I'm gonna take the empty back to the Ontario base, and that I quit. And that's what happened. I took the empty back to Ontario, which was the 10 or 15-minute drive, dropped it, you know, logged out, and when I went in my car, that's when I made that short video announcing that I had just quit my job. And now I'm unemployed chud, NEET maxing. And I don't know how long this is going to last. I'm not really in a rush. The job market's ass. You know, there's a company I have my eye on. They're paying pretty good. They got a lot of angel investors backing them, because they're starting they want to push the trucking industry to the next eon by having all electric trucks. They have a bunch of Tesla semis, so that's kind of interesting. You know, I still have not driven an EV semi, and they could potentially put me in a Tesla. That sounds pretty cool. Down the street, pays pretty well. because they have the bank to actually pay well. Most companies, they don't have angel investors investing in like some like fucking old tech. This is like they're trying to do something new. They're trying to use all the cutting edge tech and trucking so that they could be more efficient and hopefully be profitable. So that one's kind of interesting. You know, I'm waiting for them to get back to me, but I don't know, bro. You guys know all this shit already. That the job market's not that great. That's why you gotta build a personal brand of some sort. You know, look at me. Me and my brother decided to start a business, which is this YouTube thing. We already are into the crypto markets pretty hard. You know, I haven't doxed my crypto account, but I will eventually. Not yet. Um, and we're just neat maxing. You know, we're chilling. So I guess the moral of the story is don't take shit from the system anymore, man. They're not even paying well. They're not even paying well. Like, don't opt out of the system completely unless you have the means to. Like, I don't live with my fucking mom or parents or nothing like that. Like, me and my brother pay for everything. You know, it's just me and him. We're bachelors. But if you're like a 20 something year old and you can still live with your parents and optimize in that way, like, I don't like that personally. I think I get it that it's smart financially and just fucking do it. I don't agree with it. But if that's your situation, do it and start building a personal brand because you got nothing else going for you out there these days. You got nothing else going for you. Build a personal brand. Do something that has to do with building a personal brand on the internet. I mean, this has been the way for years. It's been like a literal decade. And it's the changing times, man. Like, you don't have a choice. You have to make your own money. The best way to do it is on the internet. So fucking figure it out. There's a lot of options out there. And I personally do like to stay employed. I mean, it's mainly because I don't have like a cash flowing, uh, supplemental income. So I like to be able to work in real life and not worry about money in that way. And you keep all your investments invested and you don't touch it and you let that play out and you do plays here and there on the side, but your day job income pays for your normal day-to-day life. That's the situation that I'm at right now. I'm not I'm not at the liberty to just quit my job and never work again. Even though that's what this NEET coin does. You bought a coin and never worked again, right? But in the meantime, this is the fucking arena, bro. We're bros in the arena. And you guys are too. And there's levels, man. There's levels to the game. And you gotta fucking fight. You gotta hustle. You gotta be smart. And you gotta make the right moves all the time. So, anyways, talk to you guys later. Hope you got a little value out of this video, all right? Peace.